Love and blessings to all of you who are listening right now. I wanted to make this episode as a tribute to my dear friend and soul brother, Parker Sherry. Parker left his body last week on October the 4th. He had an unexpected accident and decided to have his ventilator turned off so he could merge with the spirit once again. And it's created shockwaves in his community because he was the purest representation of kindness, compassion, love, wonder, curiosity, wisdom, purity. And unconditional love. He just had so much time, patience, and wisdom for anyone who needed it, whenever they needed it. He was my number one fan and supporter, and in the 3 short years that I've known him, I just have built an ineffable amount of love for him. And I wanted this episode to be about him. So I wanted to just riff for however long this takes and just to really share the love that I have for him. Stories, quotes, memories, whatever comes up. And I may be all over the place, but bear with me and we'll have some fun sharing his heart as best I can through my words, which aren't going to do him nearly as much justice as he so deserves because of the impact and presence that he had whilst in his human body. So I've written a few things down, and I've got also a cup of tea. And this cup of tea is hojicha tea. It's Japanese roasted green tea, I believe. And it's so funny how the universe brings you different people and resources and experiences just when you need them. This hojicha tea is has come to me from my friend Ruben, or because of my friend Ruben, who connected me to the Shumei Center in London that practices Jore healing, Jore energy healing, and they're a wonderful charity. So shout out to Ruben. And for anyone interested in Shumei, please look them up. They are a global charity with the intention of healing and uplifting the planet through natural means. And they provided this tea to me. The one of the healing practitioners, Yoshinori, was kind enough and open-hearted enough to share a few free tea bags for me to try. So this is what I have with me. So if you hear me drinking and taking a pause, that's what it is. And I hope that you have something that's nourishing you and hydrating you right now. I do love coffee, but it causes me too much inflammation, almost overpowers the energy grid. And I was talking to Parker about this, and over time he cut out caffeine and avoided alcohol and dairy and meat and all of these sorts of things. And not to say that's because that's what makes a good human being. You can still be good and take all of those things. It's just that he felt a calling, a deep calling and reverence to being a very clear channel, a clean channel for spirit. And he didn't want anything to disturb his consciousness. And to me, it just shows how dedicated he was to being a clear channel of service. And any words that I try and use in this podcast are not going to do him justice. I'm going to say it again because I'm doing this because I love him so much. And it only feels right to take a moment to slow down and to share something about him, you know, the things that I've collected about him. So, oh man, I don't even know where to start. So I'll start by a proverb that I first shared with him 3 years ago, which I feel perfectly describes who he is. And I think it will just set the tone to describe the type of spirit he is, the type of soul he is. And then maybe I'll share how I met him, and, we'll take it from there. We'll go from there. Let's start there. Rivers do not flow and drink their own water. Trees do not eat their own fruit. Clouds do not swallow their own rain. What great ones have is always for the benefit of others. And that's a proverb that I read somewhere a few years back. And I feel it so perfectly describes Parker, because everything he was about service. He was about uplifting humanity, expanding consciousness, and creating a better place than the one he found. He wanted to create a safe space for people to heal and to move into the next versions of themselves, so that they could do their highest work, because he was doing his highest work and walking his highest path. I was blessed to meet Parker in 2019. I felt the calling to do ayahuasca in Peru at Spirit Quest, which is the center, the community in Peru, in the jungle, that hosts sacred ceremonies. And he was one of the beautiful facilitators that was there at the time I was there. And one of the first things I remember about him is that he was extremely good on email, and so I'm not surprised that he then went on to start an organization called the League of Exceptional Emailers, because he was an exceptional emailer. And not only was his responses very thought out and intentional and helpful, not just one-liners, but the speed at which he responded, it just showed you that he cared, and he was diligent, and he was conscientious, and he wanted to almost hold your hand through the process. It was my first time, and so I naturally had concerns, as many people do, about different things, but specifically about the medicine and all the questions surrounding it. And he answered all of them, and put my soul at ease. And that trait continued throughout our friendship. And he's been the greatest teacher in so many things, but two of the things that have come up for me this past week, that I've been sitting with this grief and sadness and love, is friendship is one of the best damn gifts that you can receive while you're on this planet. Friendship is one of the most sacred gifts. A deep, authentic friendship is one of the most sacred gifts that you can have on this planet. It's phenomenal, the connection you feel, the love you feel, the way that you can be a mirror for each other, to uplift each other, to be there for each other, to see each other, and create a safe space for each other, to see, hear, and feel each other when no one else can, in a way that no one else can. And he did that not only for me, but I know for so many others. He had this ability to just hold a ridiculous depth of deep space. It was just, there was nothing off limits that you couldn't discuss with him that would throw him off, or that would cause him to judge you. He had this unconditional heart, because he'd walked the path himself. And that's the other thing I really admire about him that I told him on the phone. You know, my number one value is integrity in this chapter of my life. As I move into 30 and beyond, integrity. What you think, what you say, and what you do have to align. That's where self respect and self love comes from. And he walked that path. And that's why everything he was doing was a reflection of who he was being. Everything he was doing was a reflection of who he was being. There was not a thread of inauthentic energy. There was no mask with him. As Osho says, take off your mask and find your original face. He talks about the idea of an original face, your purest form, your authentic spirit. And he was that. He'd walked the path to take off his masks and was continuing to be a student of the path of highest good, highest service, highest self, of consciousness. And never for a second did he make you feel like or showed himself to be someone who knew more than you or that he knew it all. If anything, he was too humble. I would sometimes need to remind him that he is due his worthy of praise and celebration and acknowledgement for where he's at, because he's done so much and he's doing so much. And it's sad that I'm sad. Who's me? Who's I'm me? Little me is sad that he left, because I felt like he had so much good to do in the world still. And I was excited for that to unfold and to celebrate it with him. But that's just me, right? Little me thinks I know the plan and that this wasn't the right time. He was taken too soon. But, as those thoughts disappear, I realized that he was taken at the perfect moment, because everything in the universe happens in divine timing, as Parker likes to say, divine timing, cosmic timing. And he did what he came here to do. He was a reflection of service and holding space for people and helping them find their most truest and authentic self in an unconditional way. So one of the things, well, before I go into that, one of the other things he taught me, so I talked about friendship, but one of the other teachings this year alone, let alone the last 2 years, this year alone, is this teaching of grief. He's given me the gift of grief. The gift of grief. And what I mean by that is I've never experienced grief the way I have for this brother. This brother is truly something special. And he's experienced my palette of emotions whilst incarnated in this human form. And I believe experiencing every emotion, every experience is wonderful. Breadth and depth of the human experience. And that includes the quote unquote sad or negative or bad emotions, because we try to run away from the ones that don't feel good. But to be honest, all of them are amazing because they give you contrast. And we talked about this so much in Austin, which I'll get to. But I was in Austin in April earlier this year, and I'll get to that experience with Parker. But we talked about how you can only know what you want or what feels good by experiencing the opposite. And you have so much gratitude for both in that regard, for both experiences, both types of experiences. And so this week alone, I had that polarizing experience of grief and sadness and loss and feeling unsettled and ungrounded and like my heart had been ripped open. But then as I breathe through it, as I was breathing through it, and as I still breathe through it, I'm just going to take a moment here before I finish that sentence. As I breathe through it, I realize, although my heart's been torn open, what's happened is I can now see the amount of love that was inside it, and it's pouring out. It's pouring and pouring and pouring through me, throughout my body, and then through me, throughout my spirit, and then through my spirit, throughout my heart, and then everywhere else. Because love isn't meant to be packaged in one tiny place in the body, in the one tiny place in the mind, one tiny place in yourself, in your spirit, in your being. It's meant to spread everywhere, to everyone, all at once. It's what this game is to unravel the masks and the defense mechanisms and the conditioning and the behaviors that stop us from loving fully, deeply, unconditionally. And Parker was well on his way to doing that, well on his way to doing that. And an amazing teacher for it. Because when you were in his aura, you couldn't help but enter that space of harmony and peace and love and unconditional reverence for life. So as my heart's been torn open, I've realized how much love there was inside of it, and that grief and love are the same sides of, are two different sides of the same leaf, two different sides of the same leaf. You can't have one without the other. The deeper you grieve, the deeper the reflection of the love, and the deeper you love, the more you'll grieve. And that's just beautiful, because that's how both those emotions work. They come together as a package. You can't have one without the other. And that's okay. That's the human spectrum of emotions. That's what it means to be human, to experience everything. And, you know, as I was crying last week and really feeling loss of my friend, my brother, my cheerleader, my supporter, my mentor, my older brother, my guide. The image that came to me, that dropped into my awareness, was Parker is this shining light, this bright light that shines on each person that he comes into contact with. But now that light has merged with the sunlight to shine on everywhere, on everyone, all at once. You know, so in that way, he's not really gone. It's just the way that he serves has changed. He's not really gone, just the way that he serves has changed. And it reminds me of a story of an Indian saint called Sri Ramakrishna, very famous saint that had a lot of disciples, and he was dying, and he had I believe cancer of the arm or something like that. And he had the ability to heal himself if he wanted to. And so his disciples were like, please don't leave us, please don't leave us, please heal yourself. And they were really attached to his human form, his body, because that was the representation of all the teachings, of all of the energy they thought was bundled up in that body. And so he smiles and looks at them and says, don't be silly. Where will I go? And it's just this beautiful reminder that although the body disappears, so the representation of the person that you think they are disappears, the love and the essence and the wisdom and the light remains. Where does that go? That doesn't go anywhere. That resides in your heart, and that continues to guide you. So in the same way, for me, I feel, if anything, I'm more deeply connected to Parker now. His love and his light and his wisdom live within me, and I promise that I will continue to walk the path of highest good, to continue to walk the path of my soul, to continue to walk the path of serving humanity in the best way that I can. And if I can be, if I can reflect a drop of what you reflected when it came to kindness, compassion, service, unconditional love, then that's a lifetime achievement for me. Then I'm done. I'm done here because you did it so immensely, brother. I love you so much. And I will always miss your human form. Of course I will, because he had such a, a goofy smile, and the way he gently swayed his head as he talked, and so many aspects of his human side that I'll miss. But essentially he lives on in my heart, and so really there's nothing to miss in that sense, because he hasn't really disappeared. Just the way that he serves and continues to live on has changed. That's all. So I'm going to take a sip of my tea before I continue. But this time, I want you to just check in, take a deep breath, and just check in with what comes up for you as you listen to what I've said, and to think about the word grief and love and friendship. What comes up when you think about those things? I just want this podcast to go on forever. I might do multiple versions of this, because there isn't a being that I love as much as I've loved him, and I continue to love. So much to talk about him. But okay, so a couple of other things I've written down here. One word that he used to love using is shakaruna. And shakaruna in English translates to bridge person. And he was a bridge for so many people to the most pleasant, uplifting experiences that always included wisdom, pearls of wisdom. He would be a portal, a bridge, a connection point to so much wisdom, some of which would come from him, but other times it would be the space that he created, the sacred, safe space that he created for the wisdom to arise within you. So yeah. What are we? It just got me to think about, what are we bridges for? Because we're all building bridges to something. We're all connecting people to something, right? Like, are you connecting people to feel more love? Are you connecting people to feel more jealousy, envy, hatred, doubt? Or are you connecting them to feeling more kindness, compassion, inspiration, creativity, curiosity, adventure, joy, expansion, warmth, depth, wisdom? In his he used to love writing newsletters, and he used to send out newsletters once or twice a month. And it's funny, because in his last newsletter he entitled it "The Student." And one of the things he explained in there was, as the master goes down their path, they get to a point where the student, there is an eager student, eager apprentice ready to start their journey or to move to the next level of their journey. And so the master is aware of this, and he or she opens the door and says, "Come on in," and welcomes you to the next level of mastery. Let's get you to another level of mastery. And they take you under their wing. And it's funny because he said that 2 weeks, he sent that email out around 2 weeks before he passed. And it almost feels like the ascended masters, the universe itself, opened its doors to Parker directly and said, "Come on in, brother. You're ready for the next level of mastery." And so it was his time. Everything happens in divine timing. I mean, he was the best teacher of grief for me because I loved him so much. Who else could have taught me that in this very time, in this very moment? And I'm curious to see how it shapes me, how it continues to evolve my spirit, evolve the way that I show up in the world, evolve the work that I do, evolve my connection with people by having this experience of grief and sadness and love and joy for such a wonderful, beautiful human being. So I spoke to him 6 days before he passed on, and he ended that conversation. I can't remember if I shared this in this podcast already because there's so much to share, right? And I don't know what I've said twice. So bear with me if I've said something twice. Again, it doesn't matter because it's all important, and I love talking about it. So he said that he was never short of praise and encouragement when it came to seeing your potential, and he was always the number one supporter that liked and shared and commented on my posts. And there's a part of me that's going to miss seeing his name on my phone, man. Like I really am. Seeing a voice note from him or an Instagram notification from him or on LinkedIn. And he said to me, "V, you're on the rocket ship of ascension, brother." And I feel like his rocket ship has just landed in its next destination, because he was certainly going upwards and onwards when it came to ascension and development and spiritual mastery. Mm, yeah, yeah, he is a special human being. So I met him initially when I went down to Peru to do ayahuasca. And remember, one of the first snippets of wisdom that really struck me was when he shared a line from a poem that Hafiz had wrote, and it reads, "Where you are now, God circled on a map for you. Where you are now, God circled on a map for you." And it just it struck my soul because it almost validated exactly where I was, in the sense of it gave me a sense of soothing to my soul. It was like a balm for a wound I had at the time, which was feeling lost. That's why a lot of people go to the jungle, go to any place that has some kind of spiritual attraction, because they're seeking something. And so part of what I felt when I got there after hearing that was, maybe I'm at the right place doing the right thing at the right time. I don't need to be anywhere else doing anything else. And it doesn't matter what happens next, because whatever's happening in each moment is exactly where I'm meant to be. Every moment is the circle on the map. Every moment is what's been circled for me. So in that respect, it just brought a sense of calmness and groundedness. And I just felt at ease, being around his energy, and the wisdom that he would share. It just kind of made you feel like you were doing exactly what you were meant to be doing in the right way at the right time. And he was just a big proponent of just trusting the desire that was coming up within you, trusting the path of the soul, trusting the intuition, and listening. We talked about this in our last conversation. I said to him, you know what I might start doing when people ask me the question, what do you do? I might start just saying, I listen. I listen to my spirit. I listen to my intuition, and that dictates what I do. And we're both laughing because he's said a similar thing before. It's all about listening, being a clear enough channel to listen to the nudges and the whispers and the direction that you're given by that quiet voice that guides you to go a particular way. And it reminds me of a quote by Ralph Waldo Emerson that says, "Don't go where the path may lead. Go instead where there is no path and leave a trail." And Parker did that so well, in that he was blazing his own trail. He wasn't afraid to ask for help and to be guided by a mentor, but at the same time, it was his own path. He was walking the path of his soul, although there were people that may find his lifestyle or his life choices, as with many things that we may individually be doing, there'll be people that may disapprove or not understand or not be on board, and that's okay. You got to be willing to just follow through with what feels right to you, even though other people don't understand it. And Parker did that wholeheartedly. He was just so brightly shining that other people were drawn into what he was doing, and felt positively uplifted. And he didn't feel the need to justify or to please everybody. He would treat everyone with respect and with honor and kindness and compassion, but never did I feel a bone or a shred of fear or uncertainty or doubt enough for him to change what he was doing. He was so deeply called and led by a calling that it was inspiring to see someone walking in the unknown over and over again to create a path that was the foundation of which was service, you know. And he never felt the need to be at the forefront of it. It just, his work would speak for itself, whatever he did. Um, so so I met him again. I had the blessing of meeting him in Austin earlier this year in April, and the way that worked out, again, the universe is funny because it only makes sense in kind of hindsight, right? So in February of this year, I remember sitting at the Ampersand Hotel, I think it's called, in South Kensington, and I was meeting my friend Didi, and I was filling out the application form to go and do some ceremonial wachuma with Parker and Zachary and others in Austin in April. And then a week before I was due to fly, I got the email that it was cancelled. And on the application, I had to write down an intention. And so, I wrote something that felt really true to me. And then a week before, when I found out it got cancelled, for a second, I panicked. I was like, well, I don't know what I'm going to do, because the next kind of 7 to 10 days, whatever it was that I planned to go to Austin, were paid for and booked in terms of accommodation and food. And I planned out how I was going to spend my time. How am I going to spend my time now? And I chuckled because then I remembered the intention I'd put on my application months before. And it was, what would my life look like if I fully surrendered? And immediately I started laughing as I realized that the universe had provided an opportunity for me to put that practice, put that thing into practice, put surrender into practice, and to walk into the unknown. And then the way it worked out was beautiful, because when I arrived a few days into my trip, Parker kindly reached out to me and said, do you want to come on a hike with me? And we went to Enchanted Rock and to one other destination over the course of 2 days. And he was kind enough to bring the medicine for me. He came up to the apartment where I was staying on the east side, and we prepared, or he prepared um, the medicine and did a full ceremony. And we both said some blessings and set an intention. And then we were off. And he was kind enough to drive me. And I remember on that drive, we were talking about anything and everything. And we had medicine music playing on his Spotify playlist. And we had Spindrift sparkling water in the car. And then once we got there, I mean, he wasn't shy when it came to sharing his food. He brought a lot of nuts and fruit, and just the way that he was intentional about everything. We sat down, and when it came to eating and breaking our fast, and he would take a good few moments to just find stillness and pray over the food and be grateful, and to share words of gratitude before diving in. And you couldn't help but kind of get pulled into that aura of just harmony, because it was so strong within him. And so he was able to project it so deeply, consciously or unconsciously. But I loved it, because being around him made me a better person. Being around him made me a better person. And I remember there was a moment when we sat on one of the rocks on that Wednesday afternoon in Enchanted Rock. We sat, and then we had long moments of sacred silence where we were just in it together. We didn't need to share words, and that was enough. We felt each other's presence and affection and love and connection without words. And that's how I knew it was special. And, something funny he said to me in our last conversation. He said, I only want to speak if it's sweeter than silence. And it just shows the level of intentionality that he had to everything that he did. And I experienced it firsthand. I was blessed enough and honored enough to experience it firsthand. And must have done something right in my last life or lifetimes to be connected to someone so wonderful. And so then, some moments pass when we're sitting on that rock, and then he looks at me and then he says, I have this deep calling to really serve and uplift the consciousness of our planet. And if I can't use my life for service, then I don't see the point in living. And I felt that the authenticity and the depth of what he said, I felt it. And that was a reflection of, a glimpse into pretty much all of the conversations we had were around expansion and service and upliftment and encouragement and devotion to life, to spirit, to wisdom, to the ascended masters. He didn't have space to talk about small talk or all that much, at least not with me. We just dive straight in, and that was what was wonderful. It was just all about value, in the sense of whatever we spoke about was about uplifting each other and sharing wisdom with each other. So there was so much richness and value in those conversations. And I love that. I love the depth, the unfiltered depth. It was unfiltered. He wasn't afraid to share what was on his heart and to do things in an unapologetic way, because it was the truest reflection of him. He didn't want to be a tainted mirror or a dirty, muddy mirror. He wanted to be a clear mirror for what was coming through him and reflect that out into the world. And he did it so well. So one of the things with Wachuma that he shared with me when I was in Austin is that you experience eternity in a day. And a part of me now feels like he's no longer experiencing eternity in a day, but he has become eternity. He has become eternity. And he also says that you realize that there is a consciousness that directs your consciousness. And a part of me feels like he is now part of that grander consciousness that directs my consciousness. And so everything I do moving forward will be directed by my inner voice, as it has been up to this point. But I feel like part of that voice now includes the whispers of wisdom from Parker, from my brother, from my friend, from my spiritual mentor, from my spiritual guide. And I love that. I love that. And I'm so grateful for it. You know, so at the end of that day, at the end of one of the hikes, I had the pleasure of sharing a meal with him at one of the Bohemian cafes, one of his favorite spots in Austin. And it's about 8 p.m. and we ate some food and we just got talking. And one of the things that came up was I said to him, you know, it really does feel like I experienced eternity in a day. And it's not because we did so much that day. It's not because we ticked off so many things on our to-do list. It was simply because every second of the day that passed was extremely present. We were extremely present. And so we juiced the life out of every second that had passed that day. And so it felt like we'd lived a whole lifetime in a day. It felt amazing. It felt like we'd both be happy to die that day if that was our last day, because it was spent wonderfully. There was nothing else we could have asked for. And it was just a lesson for me in slowing down and just presence, being present, and really juicing the life from every second simply by being present, by bringing my focus to the present moment, not being in the past, not being in the future, but being here now. As Ram Dass says, be here now. And I feel like as we practice that, being here now and bringing our focus to the present moment, maybe less and less we need external tools to help us along the path, along the journey as time goes on. You know, as Ram Dass also says, which Parker, you know, he loved to quote Ram Dass. And one of the quotes that he told me from Ram Dass was that psychedelics almost like a day pass. You know, for that day, they give you a glimpse into eternity. They give you a glimpse into oneness and connection and unity and beyond the illusion, beyond Maya. But cultivating a habit of presence, cultivating a habit of unconditional loving awareness can be done. And Parker lived that path so amazingly well, the best that he could. So I want to read just a couple of things from my poetry book, Searching in Silence, because he celebrated my work so well. And, you know, I remember a bunch of messages on WhatsApp that we went back and forth on, and emails, where he read my draft for me and he was kind enough to provide his amazing praise and insight and celebrations. And just want to read a couple of things that I know he really enjoyed reading, and they're to do with death. So one of the chapters in the book of poetry is death, and just want to share a few words from there. So this is page 290, and it reads, "A villager was once asked, why he seems so happy with so little. He smiled and said, "Because I do not own anything. Everything I have is borrowed for a short while, including my life." And I feel as though Parker represents that so well. Like, he was really content in just being. He didn't need lots and lots of things to distract him from the ever flowing consciousness and purity that was flowing through him. He didn't have the need to attain more and more and more. Although more blessings would come into his life, he wasn't necessarily attached to that. He always remembered the foundation of what he was doing was service and was uplifting and expanding consciousness and healing, and everything else that he benefited, that everything else that he received was a benefit and a byproduct of that intention, which he also welcomed. Just want to read something else here that I feel resonated with Parker also. If you could see beyond what your eyes can see, you will see that everyone who has died is still here. He lives on in the heart. All of those who we've lost live on in our hearts. So I want to share a voice note from Parker that he shared with me just a few weeks ago, which I feel will give you a glimpse of his energy, of his beautiful energy, and insight into his heart. But just before I do, I want to share something that my brother Ty sent me, who also knows Parker really well. And I deeply love and admire Ty for who he is and who he's being in the world. And you know, he shared something with me that's going to stay with me, and that really spoke to me recently. And so I want to share this. He said, "The deep grief we both feel shows us we both love him still in this very moment. And we will always be bonded as brothers in that love. Bonded as brothers in that love." That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that, Ty. Because really, when someone leaves, what's left? It's the love that they created within us, the love that they drew out of us through their life, through their very presence and being and interaction with us. And that lives on. That's where the connection is to those that are beyond the human form. So let me share and play the voice note from Parker, and then I want to come back and just share a few closing words. Not that there are the perfect words to close. I wish there were, but there aren't. Share a few more words and then wrap up the episode.
Hey V, thank you so much for these beautiful messages, man. Really made my day. Had a bunch of meetings and stuff today, but finally getting a free moment, and love how you follow the nudges and the whispers and really do your best to listen. It's there's a recognition at some point that there's a consciousness that directs your consciousness. And I think Wachuma has been such a great teacher for me in that. It's really the development of bodhicitta, and if you're awakening for the good of all, because everything is always interconnected. And you don't get to that place because you're a self-possessed, identity-driven creature. Really unwinding that has to be some part of the intent. But it's like I want to come to, so I can understand what it means to be in service of all. I was talking to Don Howard's sister about it, and she said something effective. Otherwise, it's just a narcissistic group, bunch of narcissistic people who only want to be around and jack around in their own psyche, and that's just not really all that interesting at the end of the day. So that's part of the work, cleaning the vessel and realizing that we're all interconnected, and then awakening others to see that connection. And on some fine day that'll happen, whether it's this lifetime or another. We have infinity to figure it all out. And so, the evolution of consciousness isn't a race, but if I can do what I can to stop the suffering for some people and help awaken others, I can think, well, I did my best.
So that was a voice message, one of many beautiful voice messages from Parker, and such a gift to be able to listen back to those now and just hear him speak. So to wrap this up, I mean, there's no perfect way to really wrap this up, is there? But to wrap this up, I just want to speak directly to Parker. I know you're going to think this is too much praise for you, but you so deserve it, and so much more than I can possibly describe. But the amount of love, respect, and honor that I have for you is incredible. You've taught me so much, along with so many others, and I so deeply admire and I'm grateful for that. I will continue to do the best I can to walk this path of highest good and leave this world better than I found it. I will continue to hold your light in my heart and light up the world. As you said before, it takes 1,000 lights to light up the world, and you are all of that and more. But I carry your light in my heart, and I will continue to light up the world as best I can, to awaken, to heal, to uplift, to encourage, and to love the world. I love you so much, brother, forever and always in my heart. Para el bien de todos. One heart, one love. I love you.